Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
These shows are brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation in partnership with the Compassionate Friends. Well, Heidi, we have got such an important show today because I know there are many of you who have lost infants, and we are going to be talking to some people today about those losses and recoveries. We're going to give you some really good information and advice from those people who've been there and not only survived but thrived.
Yes, Mom, I think it is really important, and we're going to talk about infant loss and miscarriages, losses that I feel are very unacknowledged and minimized.
Yeah, they're not talked about a
Yes.
lot. Absolutely not. It's a pretty quiet thing, so I'm glad we're going to be hearing from people about this.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk today with Valerie Samuels and Nicole Alston.
Hey, Valerie.
Hello.
Hi, Nicole.
Valerie and Nicole. Hi, and Valerie is the founder of A Mother's Heart Ministry, and she is a member of the Compassionate Friends, and she has written a book, which we have right here.
Wow, always my twin.
Yes, and this is in honor of her daughter Gina, who died at 9 days old, and it's written for her twin sister.
Yes,
Julia.
Julia.
Her twin sister Julia.
Oh, how great!
I know. I love this idea, and I'm excited to talk to you about it. And then we have Nicole Alston, who we've had on the show before.
Hi, Nicole. And she's an Open to Hope author.
She is an Open to Hope author.
I don't want to mean to interrupt you, but she's
okay.
got one piece on there about her husband and a marathon that I absolutely love. So you should go to Open to Hope and look up Nicole and read that because it's a beautiful piece.
It is. It is a beautiful piece in honor of their daughter Sky. Nicole and I go way back. We've been friends for many, many years. We first met in my class at Columbia when she was my student, and then we ended up just collaborating and working together. And at that time, she was running the Sky Foundation in honor of her daughter. Today, she is the founder of Ok2Grieve, and she is an Open to Hope writer, and she has done a lot of keynoting and speaking and work in the field of grief and loss, and built a lot of awareness for infant loss.
Now, these guys are from different places.
Yes.
She's from New York.
Yes, Nicole's from New York, and
I'm originally from New York, but I live in the Charlotte area now, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina. So awesome to have you come and be on the show, and great to have you on again, Nicole. And I think that's one thing I want to mention too, Heidi, is we've done another show with Nicole, and people are going to want to watch that one too because she's dynamite.
yes, this is not Nicole's first time on our show, so please tune in and see what else she's done. And I want to know, I know that Nicole, you approached me and said, you know, I know somebody named Valerie who is very involved in this work and would be interested in being on the show. And I said, okay, can you guys come on together? How did you originally meet?
That is a great question, Heidi. I had the pleasure of, well, it's so funny, I don't even think Valerie knows this, but it was back in 2006, and it was not long after Sky's death, and I was looking and seeking ways to cope. And one of those ways was I wanted to go to a conference about pregnancy loss, and it was the PLIDA conference, Pregnancy Loss and Infant Death Alliance.
And Sky was died at birth, right?
She died at birth. She was still born, yes, on my due date. So I happened to see some write-up or something about Valerie, and she was speaking. And I was really excited to go because not only was she speaking about her experience with infant loss, but she was a person of color, and I hadn't really seen anybody do that. So she didn't know, but I was really motivated to come. So I flew out on my own. We met in Chicago, and I went to hear her speak, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Oh, wow, Valerie, how awesome. So you've been speaking for a while. How long has it been since your the twin died?
2002.
And what's her name again? I don't want to call her the twin. Gina.
Yes, she died on April 29th, 2002, at 9 days old. And after the conference where Nicole and I met, we did another conference together.
So she went up and talked to you.
Yes,
You two met.
and we collaborated, and we did a conference in, I think it was in Quebec, it was in Canada. Yes, and that was really so fruitful. Again, just bringing awareness, but also diversity into the loss area. Again, not seeing speakers or even literature, which pretty much is one of the reasons why I wrote my book, you know, just to show,
So tell me more about that piece. So, I mean, I agree with you. It's so important to see people of diversity that represent our country, and you know, like Nicole said, someone that actually looked like me. How does that change the way that you grieve? How does it impact the way that you grieve and the way that you find hope again?
Yeah.
Sure, no problem. Well, I feel like culturally, a lot of times, at least the message that I was receiving is that, you know, fine, this happened and we're sad this happened, but you've got to just kind of pack this up and move on. And that was not working for me. And I didn't quite understand why I had to do that. It didn't make sense. And that's why I think when I met Valerie, we were talking and it's like she got it. She got what I was saying. And we were both I felt we were vigilant advocates about, listen, it's okay to grieve this loss. It's a significant loss. And
Absolutely. And I thought very similarly when during that first conference with the literature that was there, lots of wonderful books. I didn't see anything that represented my family or even my experience. At that time, there were no books, children books for the loss of a twin for children. So I kind of did two things. You know, one, wrote that book, but also it reflected my family. And it seems like even though it reflected my family, but people who have used it to help them through their loss throughout all these years, it really has not mattered. I mean, everyone seems to can relate to the story. So I'm glad that I didn't feel like I needed to make it, you know, something about ducks or something. I you know, play it safe that way. I actually said, let me put my family and our experience in the forefront.
Out there. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm watching you guys, and I think our audience is thinking, and I'm thinking, tell us some of the things that you're telling people. I mean, these you've been speaking and talking, and what are you telling people? What are you telling me if I've just had a miscarriage or had a loss or had an infant loss?
well, I mean, I have had the, I should say, the honor of working with many families, particularly those of diverse backgrounds. And it's pretty well known that African American women are more than twice as likely to experience.
Important point. African American women are twice as likely to experience an early infant death.
Oh, right, a poor birth outcome, yes.
Miscarriage or whatever.
Yes.
Or poor background or something.
Poor birth outcome.
Poor birth outcome. I like that.
Yes.
Poor birth outcome. Okay.
So I've had that opportunity to work with families who've experienced poor birth outcomes, and particularly from diverse backgrounds. So in working with families, it really being present, listening, and not making people feel like they cannot grieve just because culturally maybe that has been the message that has been given to you.
Well, Nicole and I worked together. I supervised her at one point years ago, and she taught me so much, because one thing that I really learned from you is you can't sit back when somebody's grieving early infant losses or any kind of loss and say, what would you like me to do? You need to give them ideas, because you know you're so overwhelmed. And Nicole has gone in and been like the first person in after these early losses where women were still in the hospital and said, okay, let's get some ritual, let's get footprints, let's get, you know, she's made boxes for them to bring home, she's taken pictures, things that you can't go back and do if you don't do them early on.
Correct.
And you gave them these ideas, and without you, they would have had no idea even that that was an option.
So tell our audience about this. They can do boxes. Give us some ideas of what people can do right now.
Well, in the hospital, many hospitals do offer memory boxes to families who've experienced a death of a baby. So there's the memory boxes. Many hospitals will offer pictures. And even if the family does not want to take pictures at the time, sometimes the group that's doing it, you know, maybe the nurses, they'll hold the pictures for them at a different, you know, maybe they'll take them at a later time. You can dress the baby, you know, maybe bringing in clothes that you were going to take the baby home in. There are all kinds of things that you can do to make sure that you take advantage is not the best way of saying it, but take advantage of those moments that you can't get back.
What I love with both of you is that you gave me pictures of Sky and Gina, which we have today, and they are just so cute and they're so important. And it's interesting, the whole twin loss situation, because I keynoted at Twinless Twins this year. And I am a bereaved sibling, but I am not a twin. And it was interesting because I really underestimated the bond of roommates. So when you're
Yeah,
in the womb,
roommates, not roommates.
roommates, which are kind of
Yeah.
roommates in the womb.
Yes.
That bond is so strong.
Yes, it's there.
And I talk to siblings that have lost their twins early on, their twin, and they're like, Heidi, you know, it's like a part of us is missing.
Right.
When, you know, because that bond is so strong.
Absolutely. Yep. I remember early on after Gina passed away, I did a lot of reading, a lot of research about twin loss, and that's
Yeah.
how I found out about Twinless Twin Organization. And one thing I read was that twins who had lost their twins very early on, if the information about their twin was hidden, that there was a lot of anger later because no one told them. So that really helped me to come out in the forefront to make sure my daughter would know that she was a twin. She was born with a twin. Same thing for our surviving children. And also would help me, as I have helped other families over the years, when there's a twin loss, to help them take a picture together of both twins. That's so important to us. I didn't have that opportunity. No one suggested it, to take a picture with both of my girls. I didn't get to hold them together. It just, no one thought of that. And then as a bereaved mom and new to this, I never thought of it. So to be able to talk to another mom and say, you know, trust me, you will be so glad you do this, and they have.
Now, what's coming up for me right now is if somebody's watching this, and for you, Nicole, too, I haven't done this. I'm like you were. I haven't got, the hospital didn't take the pictures.
Right, yeah.
You know, I haven't got what you guys are talking about. How did you cope with it, and what do you suggest, how did you deal with it? What do you suggest that people could do now?
Right.
And you too, Nicole. And you want to start, Valerie?
Yeah, I will. One of the first things I did was I had an artist draw a portrait of both of my girls separately and put them together. And I plan to do another one in the future to include myself holding them. So, you know, it may sound very small to people, but it's so meaningful to have those types of pictures and memories. Another thing is to spend time with that child as well, because you're torn. You know, you have the living baby and then one that passed, and many times so minimized, people kind of think you should focus more on the children, your child, your twin who survived.
In fact, they should be your consolation.
Right, exactly. Or at least you have that one.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
that was a huge struggle
You're
for
going
myself.
home with somebody. Yeah.
As well in the beginning. So just having, bringing comfort and acknowledgement of that loss to a bereaved parent who lost a twin, that both of those babies matter.
And it's
lives
even more
matter.
than twins nowadays. My
Multiples, yeah.
triplets
Triplets, yeah,
was
same thing.
one family I know
Yes.
had lost triplets.
I like what you're saying, and I imagine some of this resonates with Nicole. While you didn't have twins, after Sky died, you had Autumn,
Yes.
and it was 2 or 3 years later.
About 2 years
And
later.
my thought is that people maybe didn't say this to you, I don't know if they did, but thought, okay, well, at least you could get pregnant, and well, at least you now have another daughter. And like you're saying, Valerie, that doesn't replace the daughters that you lost.
Absolutely.
This
Yes.
is a different daughter.
Exactly. I say that, in fact, someone that I interviewed and spoke with before, another bereaved parent, said, I only have one of this child. There's only one Sky. There's
Yeah.
only one Gina. So you don't replace children.
Right.
But I think that people, just society, it's just easier to say, well, at least you have this, because it puts a nice little bow on something that it's hard to digest
Right.
emotionally.
Absolutely.
So what would you suggest, as Valerie was talking about, if I didn't get the pictures and I didn't get all these things, and obviously you feel passionate about it because I assume you didn't get some of the things you would have liked to have had.
Correct. Well, right. So I remember there was one in one of the cases that I had. They didn't get the pictures, and they weren't able to have the family come in and things like that. I suggest, again, like Valerie did, having a photo done. We had an artist come, a portrait. Having what you can do is, like, if there is a nursery available, and that's what I did. I had some pictures taken of the nursery, trying to kind of recreate, stage different things that had meaning. That we had a lock of her hair. Some things we didn't get because we didn't get to see her dressed. Certain things we didn't get to do. So there's a time. Felt like there was a time limit sometimes with families, how long you can hold the baby or be with the baby, which I don't quite understand. But
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, you hear examples. We had one lady on who took the baby home, and they came and got the baby. You know, later she had the mortuary come and pick it up. So, but not everybody. You know, it's a time of crisis, and not everyone wants to do it.
Right.
Let's face it. We're here talking about the moms. What does the dad want? You know, what do people want? You've got a whole family situation. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts about dads?
Including dad. Making sure you're talking to dad. A lot of times all of the attention is focused on the mom, and that's understandable. I mean, she is going through a lot, but dad is too, and sometimes can feel a little bit isolating or isolated because there's not really anything.
Some dads I've heard feel like the woman had the relationship with the baby pre. You know, we're all feeling that way. We talk about, you know, if you play good music, and you know, there's some kind of a relationship, in womb relationship that they didn't have with the baby, and I think sometimes.
I think that is also minimized. I think that both of you knew your daughters for 9 months. I mean, you got to bond with them and you got to kind of know them, and you know, our bodies, you can feel them and all that. And it's interesting because people don't realize that you did have a relationship for 9 months before they were born.
Right. Yep. And I also remember learning very early on, thankfully, that men sometimes grieve very differently.
Yes.
So when I saw
That's
that in my husband at the time, it helped me not to get so caught up in what he did or did not do, or that his grief did not have to mimic mine. So I try to take full advantage of what I was feeling and the things that I wanted to do, whether it was support groups or talk to friends. If that worked for me, that was fine. And if he did not do that, that was fine too. But I also believe that their grief is minimized many times, and then also they need to feel like they're in control and they want to protect, and all that's kind of taken away when a child has died, because you know, they're kind of helpless. They couldn't do anything to save the child.
You're making a good point. The idea of being helpless. I've heard a lot of dads, bereaved dads, say, we want to fix it.
Yes.
We don't know what to do.
Right.
We can't fix it. We can't do anything.
Right. That's
And
right.
our wives are recovering, you know, and they don't have a baby to recover. I mean, so it's like a double. It's two things going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they hate seeing their wives sad.
Right, that's true too.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
they
belong
really
to
want to help them.
a group called Parents of Twinless Twins. This is about 4,000 parents strong. It's a Facebook group. Very great, very good support group, and that comes up a lot. The dads, you know, moms are grieving, and you know, trying to take into account how dad is doing, and sometimes dad is on a different page, and that could cause stress too, because when you're in the middle of the raw pain, many times, you know, you don't always have the tolerance to try to figure out what's going on with the spouse. You know, you just want something done, you want comfort, and sometimes that's hard for them to give, because like you said, they don't want to see you sad, and they want to fix it, and it really cannot be fixed.
We'll give our audience some tips about things that they can do now if they're maybe, you know, a couple of weeks out or whatever, they're feeling physically better, but they still can't get out of bed. How did you do it?
Right.
I'd say give yourself permission to set boundaries, because a lot of times that's the time when that raw pain, in the initial stages of grief, you have a lot of people coming over a lot of times, and well, let's do this, and or maybe they're inviting you out, trying to just help you, you know, with good intentions, but sometimes it's just too much, and it takes a lot of energy to even just have people over sometimes to do whatever, you know, or just because you feel like you've got to be up and entertaining, or you know, you need water. Just maybe setting some boundaries and saying, you know, this is just not a good time. But I really appreciate it. Maybe you can just leave the soup at the door, and that's okay.
Right. And for me, I loved going to support groups very early on. My church had one at the time. It probably wasn't even a month after Gina died, and so I was able to emote a lot and cry, and I felt so much better afterwards. But even up until now, even though it's been 17 years, I still will go to a support group.
You go to the
Compassionate friends, I
Compassionate
go
Friends.
to it, absolutely, to talk, because I recognize that many people in my circle, family, friends, don't talk about her, or they kind of past.
Well, and they might
what's going
think, well,
on.
it's 17 years, why
Yeah,
are you still
right.
talking? What people don't realize is that when you've lost your children and your brother, you've lost the future you thought you were going to have.
Right, that's right.
So things don't have a beginning and ending. We keep revisiting the losses as we go through life because, you know,
Right.
Sky and Julia and Gina, because Julia's here.
Yes.
See, I think of them as one, and I know that that's another thing about twins. They are two separate people, and Scott are not here. And so I wonder, and I'm wondering about your daughter, your other twin, Julia. Does she talk about her twin, or does she bring her up, or?
Well, you know, she's known about her twin
Yeah.
all of her life, and I made sure that she did. You know, I had a necklace with both of their pictures. We did a lot of work in our ministry, organizing walks, memory walks, and meetings and whatnot. So she participated in balloon releases and all types of things. Now that she's 17, I have found that I don't push her about talking. And what she does, though, is when she writes me a card, maybe it's birthday or Valentine's Day or Christmas, she'll always sign her name and Gina's name. That's her way, and that's perfectly fine. She also, one birthday, I gave her a necklace that's Morse code for twin. So it wasn't so obvious, but she knows what it means, and I know what it means. So that works for her, you know.
I like what you're saying to parents out there. Don't
Yeah,
push
don't push
kids.
them,
Don't
no.
push the
Yes.
surviving twin.
Yeah, don't push. And I always wanted to be at a place where one day, maybe when she's a little older, if she does feel like she feels the gravity of her loss too, that I can be there for her with the healing that I've been doing over the years. So I got you, I'm ready.
That's lovely. Nicole, how do you remember Sky with your other daughter?
We've gone to the cemetery. We do every year we do like a little birthday cake. We openly talk about Sky. Anytime she has any questions, we've had pictures up. It's always been an open book. So you know, it's not something that is going. We said we're not going to hide from from Autumn.
That's right. That's right. And also, just want to add too with birthday, and this comes up a lot in the twin loss groups, and especially parents of twinless twins. What do you do on the birthdays? Many of us, and not all, but many of us will still do 2 birthday cakes. Or we'll do a birthday cake with both names. As Julia got older, I let her decide. So there were years when she wanted both names on, and then there were years where we had a cupcake for Gina, and she had a cake. So letting her be involved in that, you know, was very helpful. But I do find that a lot of parents kind of struggle because it's a hard time anyway. What do we do? How do we write the invite? When people come over, you know, can I say my twin's name, my twin child's name? Will everyone get upset? So it's a lot of complications, you know, with milestones. With
And having to educate people on how to be good grief support for us. What do we need? You know, what do we want at certain because you know people are always afraid to say their names, and it's like it's not like we're going to forget.
Right, that's right.
It's okay to say their names. We know that they're not with us.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
we're not
Just
going to pass
the
up.
acknowledgement. Absolutely.
Yes.
And speaking on behalf of twin loss parents, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, even with multiple triplets, that child is still a triplet.
Yeah.
It doesn't become twins because one passed away if there's 2 surviving. Same thing with a twin that's passed. My daughter is still a twin, always. So when people make comments where it's singular for her, and I mean they don't have to say anything, but if they do and kind of discount the fact that she came in with a sister, you know, that could be it is very painful, I'll just say it, to parents, especially newly bereaved. They're very, very aware that there were 2 children. And when people minimize that, it's very hurtful.
Okay, now I'm watching the show and I'm seeing you 2 guys, or I'm listening to it, and I'm thinking, these people are really put together. Okay, give me some tips of how I can do it. And one of the things that I'm hearing, and I want to say this, and I think Heidi and I have noticed it quite a bit, that when people reach out, do service, you were talking about going to Compassionate Friends all these years, there's more to that. It's not just for you, it's also making meaning out of the loss, working in those areas when you're ready to move out, when you're ready to do something. So I want to know if you've got a couple of thoughts for the people about how you got where you are, both of you.
Well, yes, and that's a very good point, Gloria, because being put together right now, I'm sure I can speak for both of us. It was not like that early on. You know, you're just a wreck. Most people are.
Yes.
So your question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, give us a couple of quick tips before we close the show on what I can do to get where you are.
Well, I can tell you what worked for me, and that was my faith in God. That helped tremendously. When I explained last year that I went on a partial fast, really to kind of just find out my next steps, and really kind of I didn't close the world out just because of my grief, but just to try to hear from God what it is He wanted me to do.
That's great. So Valerie, how about you? And I'm going to use this last minute to say, Valerie, you've written a book. I think that's part of your reaching out.
Yes,
right?
it was. Yes.
Because we talk to people about journaling, writing. Love that you're doing it. Tell people where they can get your book.
It's available on Amazon.com. It's also available on Trafford.com. And as far as some tips, for me, talking.
Okay.
I love to share about her, and also talking with people who can relate. You know, if your family doesn't get it, talk to people who can. Go to a meeting.
Great. I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show today. It's been great, hasn't it, Heidi?
Thank you.
It's been wonderful, and like I said, it's a topic that is minimized and that we don't acknowledge enough.
Yep. And we want to remind you that you can visit Open to Hope, and we have a lot of wonderful shows and a lot of information on an early loss. And we want to thank you again for watching this show. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
You don't need enough hope to get through the day. You don't need enough hope to get through a year. You just need enough hope to get through the next moment.
Even though we had this thing happen to us, it also happened for us.
We hold the memories of those that we cared for, that were a part in the making of our characters. And when they pass, those memories will come back when you need them. They become voices of intuition and of guidance.
We want to be a lifeline for somebody else. We want to inspire others and say, we know what it's like to be where you are, but you're not always going to be there. Just take our hand, believe us. We'll take the journey with you.
When life presents 1,000 reasons to mourn, show life that you have 1,001 reasons to smile.
We get through this one breath at a time. We don't do it a day at a time. That's healing. That's positive, and that's what the world wants to talk about.
People die. Love doesn't die.
We always say, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours.